Yes, you've seen the title and the abstract. So indeed, if we just do go to the next slide and see where we what we trying to aim to do is we try to for you to understand the use and the value of virtual patients in teaching communication skills. And motivational interviewing is where we just focused on, but it can be used also for other purposes and for students as well as health professionals. The next slide, Ricard. So the background, of course, we know that online learning provides a safe environment, and also that at the moment it is a platform that is used more often now at the moment, also because of the pandemic and because of other circumstances, and also because the universities have to operate more lean and mean, and therefore indeed virtual platforms are more and more prevalent at the moment. Motivational interviewing is a core skill, a key skill, specifically also if we look at the chronic disease burden. I think we are probably very well aware of it. So the virtual training tool is at the moment under development, and Ricard will talk a bit more about that. So the next slide, Ricard. So what we will cover during this workshop is just the presentation as we do now, and Ricard will explain a bit more about the tool, providing the opportunity for you to engage with the pilot version. I think you most likely have done that, and also thank you for those who have completed the survey that Matteo disseminated earlier on, and also that you can have provide input in the ongoing development of the virtual tool, and also exploring the use and value of this in teaching motivational interviewing as part of team-based learning and developing other skills, for students as well as health professionals. And I think that's over to you, Ricard.
Great, thank you. Yep, so I'll start my section by giving you a quick look at the team, at our interdisciplinary team. So these are all the researchers who are working on our project at Flinders University. And as I say, it's very multidisciplinary. So we have people from physiotherapy, from psychiatry, from general practice, as well as on the bottom row, sort of starting from my image rightward, some of the computing people. And so what we're trying to do in this project is we're really bringing together all the expertise around health and health practice, clinical knowledge, as well as knowledge of how people should interview patients in a clinical situation, and also importantly how to teach those skills, combining them with some of the other expertise that we bring from the computational side in terms of artificial intelligence and things like that. So for a computer scientist, the kinds of technologies I'll be talking about today and that we'll be showing to you would fall under the category of conversational agents. So these are computer programs that can communicate with the people who are using them, but the way that they communicate is not by bringing up little pop-ups or little things to click on and so on, but it's by using language and using natural language, using full sentences as if you're having a conversation. Another word you might have heard for these things is chatbots. And these technologies are becoming very sort of ubiquitous these days. I think we've seen, if we go onto a bank's website, you might see there's an area there where you can click here to chat to someone who supposedly is a customer service agent, but it's not always a customer service agent. Sometimes it's a robot. It's a computer program that has been set up to be able to handle very simple queries about the bank's products and so on. And these things are used in online bookings and so on as well. Now, increasingly, also conversational agents are becoming used in health, and especially what happens here is that there are programs that are aimed at the client, at the patient. So you may have an application that is intended to draw clinical information from a patient, like information about their diet or their exercise behavior or whatever, and gather that information, send it on to a clinician. A further step, then another kind of use case would be where that application, that chatbot, that conversational agent is actually able to provide a bit more information, a bit more education about maybe what's best practice around managing my diabetes and things like that. And then the pinnacle of that, and this is where we really have to be careful, is with doing very limited scope kinds of interventions, behavior change interventions, where the where the app will actually do those interventions. But of course, there has to be a lot of clinical oversight there. Now, in this project, we're trying to turn it completely around. So we're interested not in a program that is sort of taking the role of a health professional or taking the role of an interviewer. We're interested in using conversational agents to try to educate the health workforce. So towards training people who will become health professionals in the skills that they need for interviewing people in a clinical kind of situation or an interview situation. And specifically, we're interested in motivational interviewing. So I think probably many of you know what it is. I'll give a quick sort of rundown of some of the main features, and Adrian can jump in if I'm not doing it justice. But motivational interviewing is a kind of a technique for interviewing where we support the autonomy of the person, of the client. We're trying to show empathy for their situation. We're trying to show that we understand where they're coming from. And we definitely support their agency in making decisions about their life. So a key idea here is that there's some ambivalence about change. So people might say, well, there's reasons why I would want to, exercise more, but there's also reasons why I don't. So there's that ambivalence. I know it's good for me, but on the other hand, so motivational interviewing is about acknowledging that ambivalence, not hiding away from it or pushing against it. And what we're trying to do is to evoke people's change talk, where they're actually expressing, well, maybe this is something I can change, or maybe this is a strategy for how I can change. And then there are other techniques like reflecting back what the person has said, summarizing, paraphrasing accurately, so you can demonstrate that you understand where they're coming from, what their situation is. So at the moment, if you're doing training in MI, the practical training will look a bit like this drawing that we've slipped in here. So you would go in, you would go to a course, you would maybe have some content material presented to you. For the practical training, you would actually go and sit down with a person, and the person would be an actor who has specially practiced to play the role of a person, a client with a certain kind of health problem. And then your role is to use the precepts of MI to interview that person. So as you can see, this is very time intensive, it's very resource intensive. You need to go somewhere, you need to put a block of time away. It costs money to go there and so on. And so what typically happens is people learn skills like motivational interviewing during their training, but over the years they don't use it so much, it falls into disuse. And then the opportunities really aren't there. So it's just not so accessible to come back and have a refresher. And so that's where we're trying to come in with this project of ours, where we are trying to develop a conversational agent who will play the role of a client. And so the idea is that a person who studies MI will have this program on their computer. Okay, so if you've tried it before, up until now, you'll see that it's currently on a web platform. So they go onto the web, they can then have a conversation with this agent, and they can get a score. They can get some feedback on how they were doing in terms of the MI principles. So now the benefits of this is that they can do it whenever they want to. They can do it as many times as they want to. They don't have to pay a huge amount of money to go to a course. There's also not that need for an actor, for those other people to do the role play. And you can think how this also then works into team-based learning and how that can be taken further as well. And so this is a way we hope, if we are successful in this project, to provide greater opportunities, more access to these training opportunities. Okay, so at the moment we have, as I said, a web application. This has been developed by our software developer, where we have one virtual patient, Anna, who is presenting with difficulties in losing weight and with diabetes. It's a text-based interface, so in the sense that you see text on the screen. This is not, other kinds of conversational agents might actually speak to you through the audio of your computer. We're not doing that. And you'll see that when we're doing the interview, when you are the person doing the interview, it's not the case that you can type in whatever you want to say and the chatbot or the conversational agent will respond. Instead, you will have a couple of options. You'll have 4 multiple choice options, and you select the best one. And some of these are good and some of these are bad in terms of MI. Then at the end, you get some feedback. We also have a few other tools to help the teachers as well. What I think I'll do at this stage is to try and demonstrate that to you. Okay, so hopefully you're seeing what I'm seeing here. This is it's my web browser. So it's just an ordinary web browser. And I think because maybe not everyone has had a chance to play with the software, I think I'll do a quick demo of it. So maybe I'll just increase the size a bit. Hopefully that's good. Go to a conversation with Anna. Start the conversation. Okay. All right. So when we start the conversation, we get a quick scenario here to explain what we're talking about. So she's 60 years old. She's overweight, diabetes. She's been sent here by her GP to talk to you. She's had some test results, high glucose level, hasn't lost weight, despite education about the importance of diet and weight loss. So what we're trying to do here is to focus on improving her diet to help her lose weight and manage her diabetes. So then the question is, what do you say next? So now you as the student come in, you're presented here with the situation, and you have to think what you're going to say next. Here's a chat box where you will see the whole conversation unfolding as it goes along. But what we do is we ask the students to do it through 2 steps. Okay, so first of all, you do indeed have to type in your own words what you would say next. And then after that, you could present it with the multiple choice options. So I'm going to be a bit lazy. I'm not going to let you watch me type everything. I'll just copy it right in. And so I will maybe say something really directive. Okay, suppose I don't know much about MI. I will say, well, I'm worried about your test results. I think we should discuss them. Then when I submit, what happens is that it changes and we get these 4 options. Okay, so now the text says, please select the closest match that represents your free text input. So what we're asking students to say is, okay, you put in this bit yourself. Now find the one that matches out of these 4 options. Find the one that you're actually going to say that matches best. And the reason why we do it like this in these 2 steps is maybe a bit unintuitive, but you'll get used to it as you try and do it. The idea is that we want to stimulate people to think, the student to think about everything they've learned so far, put it together into a response and formulate it in their own minds, and to do that kind of deeper processing. Okay, so then if I look at these 4 options, some of them are good and some of them are bad. The best one actually from the spirit of MI would be to say, I know you've been referred to me, but I'd like to hear from you, because you're then emphasizing their autonomy. But let's choose a worse one. Okay, so let's choose this one. So according to your doctor, you haven't lost weight. What do you know? What's the consequences if you don't lose weight? And then she can respond. And then she says, the doctor has told me there could be complications because of my diabetes. I know that eating lollies and so on is no good, but it's just too hard to lose weight. Okay, so then we can see that she's saying something like, okay, I know that it's not good for me. So this is what we would pick up in MI as being change talk. So whether the student then notices that or not is the next thing that we test. Okay, so I'll say something like, it is difficult, but you haven't really been trying, have you? Okay, so I'm not being very empathic at all. I'm giving very bad responses. And now you can see that as we go along, now here's one good response. You're finding it hard to lose weight, and you're also aware of the importance of changing your diet. So this is picking up on that change talk and showing that you can evoke that change talk and take it further. And so we would go through this conversation. And so it goes on like that. There are about 10 or 11 turns. If you tried this, you'll see for yourself how that works. You get towards the end, and at the end you get feedback. And I'll show you what feedback looks like. Okay, so this is a feedback page. So you get a bit of a context again. And then this part down below shows you the entire conversation that took place between you and Anna. So you have here, in this column, you have T, S, and C. So T is the text that I typed in myself. Okay, that's the stuff that I typed in myself. S is your selection, which option I selected out of those 4 options. And we can see this is the one I selected, and there's also a description here that is actually not at all adherent to motivational interviewing principles. It's quite a bad one because it's sort of directive, and we're sort of telling the patient what they should do. And then the C is the response back from the client. And so the student can go here and they can review their entire conversation, and they get feedback on whether they made good choices or bad choices, non-MI all the way. There's a partial one there. And because I chose bad options all the way, towards the end, the person makes the health professional makes a suggestion about a meal plan, and the client says, yeah, I guess so, that'll be all right, thank you, which is a very sort of mild, kind of tepid kind of response, which indicates that they were not very impressed. Okay, so that's sort of how the conversations work. I might just show one more thing. I'll just have to reset my conversations. It's also possible to put together a whole course. Okay, so not just like we have here, one conversation. What I've got here is an example where you can imagine we have a topic called Introduction to Motivational Interviewing. We have maybe some actual teaching content elsewhere. And then we have these 5 conversations that each one represents a different skill in MI. And I'll show you just one of these, which is a slightly different way of structuring the conversation. So this is about the spirit of motivational interviewing: partnership, acceptance, compassion, and evocation. So if we start that, then I'm Ethel. I've come to you to discuss management of my diabetes. I haven't lost weight. What would you say to me to demonstrate the spirit of partnership? I'll make that bigger again. Type in what you would say. Okay, now just for speed, I'm not going to type in anything, but you should imagine that we do that. Then we have these 4 options. Sounds like things haven't been going as well. Can you tell me more about that? It's important that you do something about your weight, which is very directive. Can you tell me a bit more about what's been happening? So that's a good response because you're showing some interest in what's going on with them. And would it be all right if we spend some time? So if I choose the wrong option here, it's really important that you do something about your weight. Then what she says is, I guess I'm really looking for you to work with me on this. Try again. So what happens now is that you go back and you get exactly the same options again, but now you get a chance to do it again. So in this way, the student, by structuring it like this, the student gets an opportunity to get immediate feedback on how they're doing, and then try again. And so that's a way to sort of progressively build those skills. Okay. And I'll just show you one extra thing, which you would not have seen because we haven't exposed that for everyone, but we also have editing tools. So it's quite easy for the teacher to set up these different kinds of conversations because we've created tools to support creating these new scenarios. So if we go to this page, this is our conversation editing page, our launch page. And here are some of all of the conversations that we already have in our system, in our database. So let's go back to this one that we just did, the spirit of motivational interviewing. If I click on here, I'll go to the conversation editor. So this is what the teacher would do to create a new kind of conversation for a topic. You go in here and you can see that here's the structure of the conversation. Here's a box with 4 options in it, and these are the 4 options that we started with, including the one about it's really important that you do something about your weight. So these are your first 4 choices, and if we click on them, then we can see what happens if you choose each of these 4 options. So if you say it's really important that you do something about your weight, then you get this response, I guess I'm looking for you to work with me on this. And you can see this white line means that we go back and we loop back and we get a chance to go again. And whereas if we chose a better option here, we would go through to this option and so on. And so this is an easy way for the teacher. What you do is it's very drag and drop. You click here to make a new health professional block. You click here to make a new client block. If you click on this one, and then you can select statement number 2. I'll show you a different thing. Hang on. Here's statement number 2. There's the text. You can change the text, and you can give an annotation about whether this is non-MI, partial MI, or full MI, and so on. And this is a way for you to quickly build a new kind of conversation. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the presentation now. All right. So what we've done with this system, as I've just shown it to you, we incorporated this ANA conversation into an actual topic, an actual MI topic at Flinders University, where the students had the opportunity at the beginning of the topic to do this kind of interview with the client. Then they got all their topic content, and then they had a second interview after the topic. And we compared the before and after kinds of interviews. And we were able to show that people improved in their relational skills and their technical skills. Now, it's important to stress, of course, we can't say that it was actually caused by the fact that they interacted with the system, that they showed this improvement, because of course they were also receiving education about MI for the first time, which is likely to have played a big role in that improvement. But what we can say is that we have some evidence that we can use this as a successful component in our own teaching. But what will come next is to try and get some more information about that efficacy. Okay, so there's some future extensions, some future things we're going to do. I'll just talk about each one to go quickly. One of the things that we're interested in doing with this software to take it further, and you might have thought of it, is the idea of embodied conversational agents, not just conversational agents. So the idea is that instead of having text on the screen, you actually have a face, and the face can speak using the audio of the computer. And so that makes it, and the lips move in line, obviously, with the words. You can also have facial expressions. You can also have perhaps a body, and you can start bringing in body language. So opening up that extra non-verbal channel raises new things about, okay, you're getting non-verbal signals from the patient. How do you respond to them? How do you respond to that facial expression and so on? So this is an exciting avenue that we're interested in looking at. The other one is moving away from this idea of selecting a bit of text towards actually responding intelligently to the actual text that the person types in themselves. Okay, so their own choices rather than for pre-selected options. But this is artificial intelligence, right? So this is a big problem. This is a challenging kind of issue to solve. And you may have heard of things like deep learning, which supposedly, that's a way to teach computers to do different tasks like visual processing or language and so on. Very important work by Tanana and colleagues, where they tried to do a model to predict, to sort of drive this kind of client and interviewer interaction. They had some success, but they were not able to make something that is really building a constructive kind of conversation between people. And I believe part of the reason is that that understanding of what's going on was missing. So what we'd like to do here is we'd like to model the process, the dynamic process of what goes on in terms of the MI constructs, and try to map language, ordinary English, to those underlying processes. Then usability. So this is more straightforward kind of software development kinds of things. Just what would make this program better? What would make it nicer to use? Also, for the student, are there ways to structure a teaching encounter so that learning is maximized? For the trainer themselves, are these tools that I showed you to make conversations, are they useful? Can we make them better? Can we test how much quicker you are at making conversations? And then the other idea here is the efficacy, the usefulness of the system. So this is where we're trying to gather the evidence base for our system. If you're using the system, you've had your training, and now you use the system periodically to refresh your skills in the way that we've envisaged, are you better off retaining your skills? Does it help you to retain your skills compared to someone who doesn't have that experience of refreshing? And so this idea of getting our evidence base is also important when we're going towards trying to get further funding for our project. So we're working towards applying for a grant from the Australian Research Council, which is the main government bodies sponsoring research in Australia, particularly a linkage grant. So the linkage grants are a way for academics to come together with government partners and industry partners. Typically, it's expected that the industry partners will provide some funding as well, and the government matches that. And trying to work towards something that is maybe a more applied kind of research project. Okay, so that's sort of in a nutshell where we're up to at the moment. I think I'll hand over to Adrian at this stage to start with the discussion.
Thank you, Richard, and that explains it quite well. And I think we're very fortunate to have Richard also part of the team, being a psychologist and understanding this, but also understanding the technical side. So, and also I think in relation to the linkage grant, we certainly can also embrace international stakeholders who are interested in that. So I think that's certainly a part of it. So if you're interested, that's certainly a possibility. Now, I think to start off the discussion, David, I'm not sure to what sort of extent people can put in, if they have to use the chat box or if they can ask questions. I'm not sure what you have organized. Can you tell me perhaps?
We would usually use the chat function, but if you want to give access to one or two people after using the chat function to expand more on their ideas, then we can facilitate that.
I'm quite happy to. So perhaps I'll leave it up to you to decide. So perhaps indeed if people, thank you. So if people can first maybe comment, whoever wants to comment on, perhaps people who have tried this as well, either have seen now what Richard did, but also perhaps might have experienced the tool itself, and what do you, how have you experienced that, and what do you think of it? What do you really like and what don't you like? And do you think it has good potential? As we said, this flows on quite nicely from developing, skills through team-based learning. Can you see potential in that? So I would love to see some comments on that. And thank you, Maria, for starting this off during the presentation. And maybe, Maria, you might want to say something or more about what you have written so far. Yeah, I think it will be great and to make it available publicly. But Richard, do you like to comment on that? I think at this stage, I think it is just in development. And
yes, I would say we'd be interested in working with people who are interested in taking it further in their own teaching, because we'd like to have as many people using it as possible. We're not going to make it available as a public release where anyone can come in. It would be on a basis of you maybe having starting that, initiating that conversation with us. But we really would look forward to, Charlotte, if you were interested, you can contact us definitely by email, or we can maybe have a bit of a chat afterwards as well. But we would definitely be interested in facilitating that.
I think but so far we have been lucky to get some modest grants, and that has helped the development. But I suppose indeed the ideal tool, of course, will need a lot more. So I think in that sense, I think indeed we would embrace, just more people coming on board. But again, of course, there's an associated cost with it as well, and that cost needs to be offset. So whether we make it available to universities and other things, I think it's a really good tool, has got a lot of potential. And I suppose it might be quite cheap when a lot of people will like to have access to it. But I think that is still, remains to be discussed and see how that is going to work out.
Yeah, sure.
So yeah, and motivational interviewing is complex, and as you have seen as well, there are quite a few different things we have to keep in mind, you know, just to make it successful. And the other thing is what Rickard has alluded to as well, is the problem is also as clinicians, and so I've been a clinician for most of my life as well. If it's really busy and your waiting room is full, then you refer again to telling people the solution rather than negotiating and fostering ownership, you know, over the plan. And I think that is the least effective way of doing it. But it is just because we are sometimes really under the pump and referred back to our old behavior. So I think the advantage of this tool is that you can keep practicing as well, and even also use it as part of your professional development as a professional, you know, professional development point, and that you keep your skills up to date, and you can use it at any time asynchronously as well. And that's the same for students preparing themselves for and get together where they can role play and where they can do it in the real world, you know, or even on placement with patients. Anyone else who wants to comment? I think it's great to see the positive comments on that as well. But perhaps even with the limited funding we have, you know, had so far, are there any sort of things that you want to comment that we could improve on? Oh, it's good to see that avatars have been used to test pharmacists. Yeah, excellent. Yeah, I think there's a lot of scope and there's a lot of development in that space. I think in that sense also, Rickard worked also with David Powers, and David is a professor in artificial language technology. Sharon Lawn is a social worker by background and a professor and specifically also interested in mental health. John Litt is a GP, got quite a few different awards and NHMRC grants as in relation to addiction, specifically in the area of smoking, and also developed clinical guidelines. So Belinda Lange is a physiotherapist like I am. So I think we have got a very diverse background, but and it really helps to develop a tool that we know is going to be useful. Well, that's what we hope, and that's what we're working towards. Are there any other comments? We still have got plenty of time. Yeah. Rickard, is there anything else you want to say?
Yeah, maybe just getting back to what you were saying, Adrian, if people have tried it or if they have some impressions of what I demonstrated, are there things that you liked and didn't like, or maybe let's focus on what didn't like? Are there things that you thought, well, maybe that's not going to work, or maybe that should be changed, or I'd like to see something that's maybe something else that you think is missing that would be useful to hear about, some ideas that people have?
I know there are advantages as well, as Rickard showed at the end. You know, teachers can refer to this tool so that students can at least get the basics without having to attend a lecture. So they can prepare themselves in that sense. They can train. But indeed, if there are any other things you can comment on, that will be quite useful. Yeah, so David said as well, if there's anyone who wants to be part of the discussion, just let David know as well, and he can make you active as well. And
yeah, I think it would be quite nice if anyone wants to. I don't want to force anyone to join, obviously, if they don't want to. But yeah, particularly to talk about maybe some similar experiences. That would be really interesting, I think, to kind of move the discussion along as well.
Yeah,
and
okay,
I
so
like
we've got
to.
an interesting. Sorry.
Yeah. No, thanks. Go ahead, Rickard.
I was going to say we've got an interesting question there from Cornelia about building in unexpected situations.
Yeah.
That's great. So in a sense, yes. So in a sense, it's unexpected. Well, I guess if you're a student, everything is unexpected, right? But for the person who's creating a conversation, I think this is maybe what you mean, Cornelia, is there some sort of way of adding randomness and unpredictability? So it seems very sort of predictable. This leads to that, this leads to that. And that's a good idea. We are going to explore that, first of all, in terms of having random kinds of selections out of all the options, but also having maybe different ways of saying roughly the same kind of thing, so having a bit of a variety in that sense. but also more generally, when we're moving towards actually understanding the language that the person provides, then the unexpected really starts happening, because then it's not really controlled what the person says anymore. We have to respond to that online, and so you can take it in completely different directions. You can also, even in the way that we've structured it already, we can just have, okay, well, we'll randomly jump either to this part of a tree or to that part of a tree. We can definitely build things in like that as well. So the idea is not that I agree with you, it shouldn't have to be so directed and linear and deterministic. Definitely there should be some scope, and that's a good idea, to scope to vary the kinds of things that do happen, as long as we keep in mind that what we want to teach is that there's consequences for the way that you interview a person. So if you don't show enough empathy, if you're being very pushy and not interested in what they're saying, then you're not going to get as good a random thing to jump to as when you are basically doing the right kinds of things.
It's a really nice question, though, of Cornelia, and I think, and Cornelia, you might like that story as well. It really reminds me, because I suppose the way we act and react, perhaps on what people ask us, or what health professionals may ask us, it depends if you've got a good day or bad day. It depends also how open and straightforward you are. And it really reminds me of a lovely patient I had many years ago, and he was very straightforward and called a spade, but he was quite obese and loved his home brewing. So anyway, he saw the GP, but the GP, who I know as well, became quite obese over time as well. So this GP told him, I said, well, you should lose weight. And then the patient all of a sudden said, but look at you. So I think this is one of those unexpected situations, and I think perhaps indeed when we bring in body language, Richard, and other things as well, then there might be that opportunity for when people really cross their legs all of a sudden, and for indeed to throw in something that is anyway, I hope that you enjoy that sort of story.
Yeah. And would there be one question I have actually? Would there be any scope for building this into kind of further integrated intercultural education by using this kind of tool?
I think I can't see why not. But what do you think, Richard?
Yes, so you're referring, I mean, in the Australian context, I think we have different cultures where we have the indigenous people's way of approaching things around health and so on, as well as other kinds of more Western kinds of approaches. So in that sense, yes. So even though we're focusing on one particular technique, we don't think that it's just just for that one technique. We will build a model that is for MI, but we can build a model for something else as well in that sense.
But it's an interesting question, David, I think, and Richard, because basically we have got now also, and you see that everywhere in the world, people coming in a country with a totally different cultural background. And so there are different expectations, being treated by a male or a female, also what you can say and can't say, if you have eye contact or not. And I think that brings me back again to the point of Cornelia, how can we cater for that and prepare people for that who have got a different cultural background?
Yeah. I see Cornelia's added onto a question to elaborate that a bit. And then, okay, I understand that. So what she's saying is, you could then have different levels of complexity depending on maybe different levels of students versus advanced practitioners, and that's also an important thing. But so at this stage, we're in the early stages of just building things and dragging and dropping and so on. But yeah, definitely that kind of tailored to the individual idea is important for us as well. Okay.
Charlotte, I'm not sure of the introduction of red herrings.
Yes and no. I think what happens in the, I mean, you can comment as well, Adrian, but my understanding of the virtual patients, the standardized patient, the actor, would be that they do that in those situations. Sometimes there is an interview with a teacher, and the teacher will demonstrate the wrong kind of thing. I don't know if that was normal in training. I've witnessed that, but I saw that as an example. So yes and no. So I think there's some argument against showing wrong practice, as well as towards making it obvious. And okay, you definitely don't want to do that, and you choose the good one. Maybe do you have some comment on that, Adrian?
Well, it reminds me because we used in teaching as well, clinical skills, we use actors as well. And I remember some of the actors were really good. So if people had more skills, they made it just more difficult for them. And when they were struggling a bit, they were sort of indeed be a bit more, friendly. And so I think in that sense, I think I can see, and going back again to what Charlotte mentioned as well, I think the tool as it is probably quite good in what it wants to do and what we set out to do as teaching motivational interviewing.
Yeah.
But if your skill level is increasing, that's maybe where you can start throw in. So you could ultimately, you sort of can have level 1 or level 2 and an advanced level where you won't be surprised, very quickly, So, I mean, just a thought.
Yeah.